Hi everyone, my name is Jen and this is Beast House of Plants, where I talk things houseplant and home design. Welcome back to LECA week on my channel. So today is actually day 3 of LECA week. If you missed the past 2 videos, I'll make sure to link them down in the description box for you. So on Monday we talked about what is LECA, what are the pros and cons to LECA, as well as all the different materials that you would need to grow your plants in LECA / passive hydroponic. And then yesterday I walked you through my process of transferring a plant from soil into LECA, and then we also talked about the types of plants that I would recommend or would not recommend to be transferred into passive hydroponics. And in today's video we're going to talk all about nutrients, what is it, how to use it, how do you mix it, as well as pHing your water. I am expecting this to be a long video, so there will be timestamps down below as well. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, so let's talk about nutrients. The nutrients that you're giving your LECA plants is essentially fertilizer, the same fertilizer that you would be giving your soil plants. The difference is with LECA plants, you're giving your plants this nutrients in much smaller dosages consistently year-round, versus when you're fertilizing, it's during like 1 or 2 big re-ups during the spring and summertime. This is because LECA is a completely sterile medium. It has no nutrients in it at all, versus soil, which naturally has some nutrients in it. When you're fertilizing, it's also a much more flexible process because the potting mix itself is acting as a buffer between the roots and the chemicals. And you can't give your plants too much fertilizer. When you're giving your plants too much fertilizer, it can actually really harm and burn the roots, as well as cause something called nutrient lockout, which is basically because there's so much nutrients in the soil, it causes like weird chemical reactions, and therefore the plant can't absorb any of it, despite the fact that there is a lot of it within the soil. And so you kind of have to be careful about that with LECA plants, because there's no longer this buffer. So you have to give the plant every single nutrients that it needs to thrive, and you have to consistently do it. That's why there's products that have been specifically formulated to do this and to work within hydroponic systems or within passive hydro systems, so that it's ensuring that it's easier for the plant to uptake the nutrients as well as work cohesively together. Okay, so this is the nutrients that I use for all of my LECA plants. It is the trio from Fox Farm, and this is the trio that has been designed to work together. There's 3 bottles because they do different things. When you're looking at fertilizer, they all have this number on the front that's like a series of numbers. That's the NPK value, and the NPK stands for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Those are the main 3 nutrients that all plants need. There are secondary nutrients and other nutrients that a plant needs, but they need them in much lower quantities. So I'll put them on the screen right now. So a lot of times if a fertilizer has any of those things, I'll say it on the back, but it's not one of the main 3 numbers that's on the front. And so there's 3 different bottles, and they do different things, and therefore their NPK value for each bottle is different. Okay, so at a very surface level, so what the 3 NPK values do: the nitrogen helps a plant be able to photosynthesize and helps a plant with developing leafy greens and foliages. And then the phosphorus is really important in the buds and bloom development of a plant. It also helps a plant create stronger tissue and therefore become less fallible to pests. And then the potassium is really important to root health, and it also helps a plant deal with external pressures like stress or temperature fluctuations, and things like that. So the most popular nutrient recommended for LECA is either the Fox Farm series, which I'm using, or the General Hydroponics one, which is also a trio series. I've never used the General Hydroponics one. I did give my thoughts about why I chose one over the other in Monday's video. But sometimes I get like, well, can I use this instead of, this other product? And the answer is yeah, probably. I would make sure that one, whatever you're using, you are diluting it a lot, to probably about 1/8 or 1/4 of the strength of what is recommended on the bottle. And two, make sure that it actually has an NPK value, which is what makes something a fertilizer. Like for example, Super Thrive. Super Thrive is a great product, but it is not a fertilizer. It has a 0.500 NPK value, so it has absolutely no phosphorus and absolutely no potassium at all. So this, you can't use this product alone, because this would not give your plants all of the nutrients it needs in order to survive. Or maybe it'll survive, but it probably won't thrive. And the second thing is that I probably won't do too much experimenting and probably won't try out too many other products within my LECA plants, because I think that's more work. When you are using a product that has been designed for LECA like this, you know that all of the products work together, versus when you are trying to mix a bunch of different products, you don't know if that's causing like a weird ratio and a weird chemical reaction, and also you wouldn't entirely be sure that you're giving your plants all the nutrients it needs in the ratios that it needs. So this is generally just a safer bet for me to purchase a product that has been designed for this purpose. Okay, so now that we've talked about what is nutrients, let's talk about how to use it. So I bought a pack of these syringes off of Amazon, and then I rubber band it to the bottle. I learned this trick from Minimalist Callie. So this syringe is only ever used with this bottle. This is because the chemicals are not supposed to be mixed in an undiluted form. They're only supposed to be mixed into water. So separate syringes ensure that they never mix. So you're also supposed to slowly build your plant's tolerance to nutrients. This is because you're not supposed to feed your plants when it's stressed, and when it's first being transferred from soil to LECA, it is likely stressed. So this is how I did it. Other people do it differently, especially if you have other products, you might have to do it differently. But this is what I did. So the very, very first week when I was first transferring my plant from water to LECA, I only used 1 literal drop of Super Thrive in the water reservoir, with the water having been pH'd. And then 1 week after I transfer plant, I completely switch out the water. And I do this because I find that oftentimes, although I have cleaned the LECA prior to using it, it still has some deposit left in it that kind of ends up living at the bottom of the reservoir, and I want to get rid of that. So I'm flushing again and then changing out the water. So that first week after, that's flush day number 1. And then on flush day number 1, I use only Grow Big at half strength. So the instructions is 2 teaspoons per gallon of water. So that equals about 10 milliliters per gallon of water, I believe. So I'm using half of that, which is 5 milliliters per gallon of water, and then pH it, and then that's the thing that's in my reservoir for the first week. Every flush day happens every month, so you're not changing out the reservoir until flush day number 2. Every week in between flush days, I'm just using filtered water that has been pH'd, and then on flush day number 2, I'm using Grow Big at full strength and Big Bloom. So I'm gonna be honest that I have never used Big Bloom at full strength, and this is because Big Bloom is made out of worm castings, so it's a very yucky color. It is brown, and if you use full strength of Big Bloom, you're sitting your plants in brown water, and I just don't love that. Don't really like the look of that, and so I use about quarter strength of Big Bloom. So the instructions is 60 milliliters per gallon. I usually use about 20 milliliters per gallon. and I still use 20 milliliters per gallon, sometimes even less, honestly. So flush day number 2 is now Grow Big and Big Bloom, and then flushing number 3 usually would have been reserved for upping the dosage of Big Bloom, but since I did not want to up the dosage of Big Bloom, I just started incorporating Buds in Bloom, which is the third one. This one is also 2 teaspoons per gallon, and then that flush day number 3 I'm using half strength, so I'm using about 5 milliliters, and then every flush day after that I am using full strength of Grow Big and Buds in Bloom, and then about quarter strength of Big Bloom, but you know, you could use more of it, it's up to you. Okay, so I used just those quantities of all the nutrients every single flush day for about 4 months, I think 4 months, 3 or 4 months, and then I recently decided that I was going to start experimenting with tap water instead of filtered water. And then I was also reading on the Fox Farm website that they actually recommend you change out the reservoir every other week instead of every week, and since I am switching to tap water, I decided this was a good time to also start flushing more to help, because obviously tap water has more excess salt and minerals than filtered water would. So now I'm using the same amount of nutrients but twice a month instead of once a month, so technically my plants are getting double the amount of nutrients that it was before, but I'm not upping the dosage. That makes sense. Okay, so like, what do I do for example, when I transferred my plant this week from soil to LECA? Am I mixing up a completely different batch of nutrients for just that plant? I am not. I feel like that's not a best practice, but what I'm doing is basically I flush all of my other plants, give it new nutrients, and then the plant that is newly transferred, what I do is then I further dilute the nutrients to about a quarter strength or half a strength, and then give that plant all of the nutrients at about quarter strength or half strength, depending on how long it's been transferred. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so now that we've talked about nutrients, let's talk about pH. I feel like pH is not often discussed, but quite important. So with pH, pH is really important because it determines your plant's ability to absorb the nutrients that you are giving it. So if your pH is like completely out of whack, although you're giving your plants a ton of nutrients, it is probably not properly utilizing any of it. So with pH, obviously you should pH your water after you added the nutrients because the nutrients will change the pH. Normal tap water is very, very alkaline, and then the nutrients is very, very acidic. So for weeks that are not flush weeks, where I'm not adding any nutrients at all, I have to use pH down, which brings the pH level down. And then for weeks that are flush week where I am using nutrients, I have to use pH up, which brings the brings the pH value up. And what you want your pH to be is within like a 6 to 6.5 range. If you have one of those electronic pH sticks, you can be a little bit more specific and a little bit more precise with that. I use the color indicator test, so I just try to get it around where a 6.5 is in that range, and I'm generally pretty happy with that. Oh, this episode has definitely been the most technical episode so far. Hopefully it wasn't too bad. If anything needs further clarification, or you have a question, or I explained something poorly, let me know in the comments down below. But that's what I have for you today. Make sure to come back tomorrow where we talk about flushing and how to maintain your plants in LECA. Alright, thank you so much for watching this video. If you like it, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye!